Well, I think this is the last day, gentlemen. We should let everybody know what's going on. So here we go. What do we got here? Let's let LRH know. Teens for Christ. Gotta let them in. Oh, who is this individual? We got Pound MDE. Our friends at Not Math. We got our homies over at Pound Sally. The final editing stream of SPACETARDS. So yeah, I'll talk a little bit about the experience in trying to find an editor or a copy editor for this guy in a second, which has been Ukrainian online attractions worth checking out during quarantine from Misha, which is hilarious. All right, let me see, and then I'm not gonna let hip hop know about this, but JRE would need to be up in there. We gotta let my Discord know, and then we'll also shout out to the Real Politics Discord. So hello to everybody who just I see Big Stratum up in the chat right there. That's all I really need to finish this. Is like Stratum, maybe Big Spathy Wah. We can do it. So yeah, this is going to be our 9th day of editing here, and if we complete this, we'll have gotten just about all 30,000 words in that 9 days, which I should really have an easier time doing the math for, but it's like we're doing 3,333 words a day or something like that. Oh, it's Big Lions. So yes, hello to everybody there. So we'll talk a little bit before we get into the editing here. We're going to try and get through all 20, I guess this is about 18 pages here, because one of those pages is just a list of all the Marines and some other stuff. So it's really 2 chapters, but we're just going to call one the epilogue, so that we can have 13 chapters in this, just for book structural reasons right there. But we've been doing this every day. I see no reason not to do it again right here. Get all this bullshit off of our felt right here. All right, so we know of an ancient radiation. Let's get some cards out here. What do we got right here? Oh my god, I seldom see this guy. It's the 6 of Cups right here, the Knight of Pentacles, and then the 2 of Cups right here. All right, a pretty happy set right here. So what this means is potentially today, what I would be afraid of is, well, actually, hold on. Let's take a look at where the Knight of Pentacles is going right here. So the 6 of Cups generally indicates a happy time, a time where things are in balance, sort of the middle part of a relationship where you haven't even really started to see the signs of things coming apart yet. Then the Knight of Pentacles is sort of somebody who is an up-and-comer, usually in the realm of work or the material world right there. And then the 2 of Cups is generally the beginning of a new relationship and a very strong and powerful relationship there. So I'm struggling to tie this all in to the conclusion of our story right here. I'll tell you what's going on in my life. I'm trying very hard to hire a copy editor to work with us here on the show. I put out like a bunch of proposals to different editors on some different sites that sell copy editing services. And generally, I like to work with women for the most part, but it's mostly men who edit science fiction, especially something like SPACETARDS right there. So you have a few promising leads right there. In general, except for one person who is probably in Indonesia, the editors have come back with quotes that have been like way too fucking high for what we're doing. So good job cutting out the Chinese market with the 13 chapter book. Yeah, they like 13. I think it's It's like fucking 8 that they don't like. Which I hear you. All right, so yeah, I will tell you for once, I don't have a good idea on what this could portend for me or for you today. I do notice that a guy with money is standing between these two relationships. So I want to say that what this means is that somebody out there who is happily married is going to wrest the side piece away from some businessman with a lot of money. That's how I feel. I mean, that was pretty easy. Whoop, wrong scene. So yeah, like basically, so I found one copy editing service where they just specialize with writers that just spew out a fuck ton of writing. And so what I did is I got together the 5 books, because really with the conclusion of this one, this is my 10th book right here. So there are 5 books that I have in at least a edited once draft, right? There's this book, SPACETARDS. There's the next one that we're going to edit on stream, Lemon Maybe and the Electric Lady, which I think you guys are going to like a lot. There's the full version of the Master Arcanist, which has all 4 books, not just the one that you can find on my site. There's Rapasaurus, which is pretty wild. And then there's Gravid, which is the last book that we edited there. So those 5 books, which would double the number of books that I have out. Although I would only have 10 out because I would have 9 out because I think we'll take the little version of Master Arcanist off the market, and then we will probably just have 9 total books. But then I have more that I'm working on after that. So adding this all up, I think I sent an email to this lady. Let me get the word counts for you. Yeah, the people, the editors that I've worked with so far have just been really nice. So let's take a gander. Okay, cool. So here's what our word counts were for all of this. Like to authors, word counts are something they fixate on, like dick length or I don't know, TPS reports or fucking GDP or net income or something. It's like just one of those numbers that really sticks in you. So SPACETARDS here, we're at about 30,000 words. Gravid clocked in at 207,000 words. Then we had Lemon Maybe and the Electric Lady, which puts us at 120,000 words, brings us all the way up to about 360,000 words. Then we have Rapasaurus, which is 160,000 words. That puts us at 520,000 words. And then we have the full version of the Master Arcanist for another 110,000 words. So this is these are the books that I've been working on in the last, I want to say the last 3 years for the most part. So it looks like it's about 630 some odd, 640 some odd thousand words, which means that I write about 200,000 words a year. Just to fill you guys in, an average novel should be about 80,000 words. So that means that every year I'm almost churning out 3 fucking novels worth of finished and edited material. It's not totally fair to say that because Rapasaurus and Lemon Maybe, I think I've been working on for a few more years there. So really the output's probably more like I write a new novel and some change every year. Goddamn. The bottle looks cool with the green screen. All you can see is the label and we get a lot of that happening with our green screen on the other show too. Yeah, it's one of my favorite drinks. It is just basically like a mixture of very thinned down apple juice and mineral water. That's one of my favorite things. So I don't know if you can hear it, but my voice has been going for the past couple of days. And I don't know, maybe I got that old Corona. We're going to have to fucking find out. But yeah, it would really fuck up our editing schedule if I was to get a debilitating virus where I couldn't talk. So I'll keep you guys updated. If I do get a hold of that, I just have bad lungs, so might be the end for the kid. It's pretty hectic here in New York City in terms of access to hospitals and so forth. We're ramping up like right on the terrible part of it. So yeah, we'll see. I'll keep you guys informed. But honestly, all that's really left for me in this earth, because I've put out like most of the books that I really wanted to write. But there's more that I'm excited about. I'm gonna do this every day. But I'm fucking satisfied at this point. This is a lot of what I wanted to get done in the world, and my personal relationships have been fantastic. I think I have gotten a lot farther than I really deserve to in relationships, and people have been like super good to me. So yeah, I'm like kind of totally at peace. I'm sure I'll be like screaming and flinging shit and cursing Satan and praising Yahweh and all this other shit if it comes down to the end. But at the point, I'm pretty happy with how this has all gone down. So enough this maudlin shit. We have a bunch of pages to edit today, and I really do want to finish this book today if my voice will hold. So we'll see what we can do there. So if the first chapter is 0, so I actually have some fairly stringent requirements for making a first chapter of a book, a chapter 0 or a prologue, right? I know we've done it in some other books. But I think for something to be a prologue, it has to be a little bit divorced from the rest of the story. And here in this book, it's really not a chapter 0. Like the Chief of Marines is heavily featured right there, and the Chief of Marines is a significant character within this. He's not like a one-off and everything. It's just the arc of the story doesn't really, in my mind, lend it to being a chapter 0. And 13 chapters is the number that I would love to have here. So let's all right, chapter 13. The crack of doom smote the 37th platoon like a blow from the hammer of God herself. So this is a little unwieldy, shall we say. So we say the crack of doom smote the 37th like a blow from the hammer of God herself. It's super corny, but I'm going to keep it unless somebody has a better suggestion, because I like that one. The concussion took Gunny in a roar of pure white hurt, and he was enlightened. His body and gear were just a medium for the transmission of Bango's... His body and gear were just a medium for the transmission of Bango's epiphany. No thought was possible. The whole platoon had front row seats to a reenactment of the Big Bang. Okay, this is maybe like the purplest fucking prose I've ever written in my goddamn life. I remember spending a bunch of time revising this paragraph, but I didn't spend enough time. So let me just pause a second and think about how to fix this. All right, so edit suggestion, less smoting. I really like that smote line. We're going to work it in there. Okay. The explosion took Gunny in a roar of pure white hurt, and at once he was enlightened. No thought was possible. Gunny's body and his gear were just a medium for the transmission of Bango's epiphany. They've been smote by the hammer of God herself. Front row seats at a reenactment of the Big Bang. I really like that. I know it's bad. You guys might have to just give me this one. It's important to me. They'd been smote by the hammer of God herself. Front row seats at a reenactment of the Big Bang. All right, that's like a little bit cleaner. I think I can't bear to cut this out. I'm not a kill your darlings type person. I just love how fucking corny this is. I think we've earned it. I know we haven't. let's get to the rest of the story, but less smoting. Inconceivably, Gunny survived. He opened his eyes into an incredible pain. We don't need incredible, actually. He opened his eyes into pain. Oh, hey, Dubert Crunch. Yeah, welcome. I guess that's Mixer. So if they have buttons on their suits that can instantly kill them, why don't they have things that automagically inject pain drugs? Well, one, nothing is automatic in this series. Give me 1 second. I want to just... Oh, I don't think we can get away with reassembled there. Okay. So yeah, nothing is automatic in here. And so far, there's been one instance of them talking about pain management there. And I think it's when Sipper gets lanced through the forearm and Gunny hits him with that suit seal foam. And I think there are some pain drugs in that like complicated sealing antiseptic foam and so forth. But for the most part, we haven't gotten really into like the potential junkie aspect of this. And he may be kind of robbing ourselves there because here's the thing about like being in combat. Everybody is fucking high all the time if they possibly can be. I mean, people will fucking drink mouthwash to get high before going into combat. It's like an existential need. Like those shipping stickers that turn red if shocked. Maybe, yeah. Like if they encounter like a fent patch that only fires off if it experiences like a traumatic explosion type thing. That's like an interesting idea. I don't know that it. I don't want these guys to be doped up during the climax of our action here. I want them to feel everything that's happening. So yeah, but like these first two paragraphs are really, really pretty fucking ham bone here. Inconceivably, Gunny survived. Pain had infiltrated every part of his body. Every millimeter had been shifted out of place and put together wrong. Oh, yeah, we don't need this of him. Uh, oh yeah, we're like losing the thread of. Love all those like World War One stories where they're all about shell shock, and I think that was one of the descriptions that really stuck with me of like everything being jarred out of place. Oh yeah, actually, let me use jarred. Pain had infiltrated every millimeter of his body. Every atom had been jarred out of place and reassembled wrong. Gunny kept blinking, but he never felt quite awake. The fug was unshakable. He couldn't see. Had he been blinded? He realized he couldn't see anything and began to fear he'd been blinded. He realized he couldn't see anything, and he was afraid he'd been blinded. Gunny felt the platform beneath him swaying. He thought the whole whale must be reeling from the explosion. I like the use of the Titanic there. Um, Wait, help me out here. I can't remember. Did we decide we were always capitalizing whale? It's not a. Yeah, it shouldn't be capitalized. What am I fucking doing here? Just making more work for them copy editors is what we're doing there. So let's try this paragraph one more time. Inconceivably, Gunny survived. Pain had infiltrated every millimeter of his body. Every there were many examples where, well, yeah, I don't think it's. I think it's like a common noun at this point there. But I know that we fucked that up in a few places, so we'll do a search. I think yeah, we did like that find and replace, and then we had all the yeah, we uncapitalized all the whales, and then all the sentences that started with whale were fucked up because I didn't do it the smart way and put a space in front of it when I did the find replace. Okay, cool. I'm glad I could figure that one out from the that whole thing there. Um, he couldn't see anything, and he was afraid he'd been blinded. Then he felt the platform beneath him swaying and reasoned the whole whale must be reeling from the Titanic explosion. Then he remembered his blast shield was up. When he dropped it, Let me see. If there were one whale, it'd make sense, but there's many. It shouldn't. Nobody capitalizes aircraft carrier. Uh, so Random D says, huddled in a fetid studio apartment, shit overflowing the kitchen toilet, brown slush soaking into the futon on the broken tile floor. Load rants at an Acer 19-inch laptop he found in a public library women's bathroom trash. tell Randy I said hi. Yeah, that reminds me of he had like a copy paste about Macaulay Culkin multi-bloxing World of Warcraft as shit bloomed from his unbuttoned fly that was definitely partially inspired by yours truly. Right there, it's a Smithy advises that I ghost Random D. Now I love Random D. Random D is a fucking genius. Really and truly, one of the greatest contributors in the history of TrollDB. His legitimate enterprises are amazing. His Twitter, Big Blue Blue or something like that. Just every day he has like a different amazing animation that he's made in like I think Cinema 4D or something like that. He plays like 20 different instruments. Once shot a man just to watch him die and to jerk off on the corpse. He's just a fucking genius. So, yeah, shout outs to Random D. Please relay these sentiments if you can't get into the YouTube chat there. Gunny reached up to lower his shield just as another... Gunny felt the platform beneath him swaying and reasoned the whole whale must be reeling from the Titanic explosion. Then he remembered his blast shield was up. Gunny lowered it, and miraculously he could see again. Just in time to get clobbered by a wave of black fluid. The whole platoon was rolling in the gunk. Thick black fluid. The whole platoon was rolling in the gunk like driftwood in the surf. The silence was total. Gunny could feel the wave crashing over him, but he couldn't hear it. The silence was total. And Gunny thought it might be permanent. Tardy ears could take a pounding, but everything had a limit. He knew if his hearing didn't start to come back within 15 minutes or so, it wasn't ever coming back. Gunny struggled to rise from the gunk. Shaking his head, Gunny struggled to rise from the gunk, which was now as thick as pudding. The last-second idea to clip the unit... so last second is hyphenated here. His last-second idea to tether... let's see. His last-second idea to secure the Marines to the bars of the half-exploded disc had saved the 37th from getting swept into the sea of darkness. Mm-hmm. When he could string two words together, Gunny was scanning his Marines for signs of life, heartened by the number he saw attempting to rise. What a beating they'd taken. Their eyes were dark red with burst vessels, their movements were halting, their faces winced with every motion. The whole platoon was one big bruise, inside and out, but most were alive. One by one, they gave Gunny the thumbs up. I could add something about how others are like, I'm blind, but I think we have enough slapstick so far this chapter. Gunny returned the gesture to each. Gunny returned the gesture to each Marine, still not quite convinced he'd really made it. No one should have survived that, yet here they were. Bango had a look of utter bliss on his face. He kept signing 6 bars to nobody. He kept signing 6 bars. By some weird trick of physics, it was the 3 Marines at the center of the huddle that bought it. Yancey and SS were sculled and motionless. Aziz's eyes were still open, and he was still breathing. Aziz's eyes were open, and he was still breathing. But he'd Aziz's eyes were open, and he was still breathing. But he'd brushed too close to Nirvana, and he was never coming back. The big beamer was still locked in his grip as the waves sloshed over him. The big beamer was still locked in his grip. As the waves sloshed over him, the light glittered crazily from the mirrored ceiling. The silvery surface had been fractured at the epicenter. There was a vast spiderweb of fractures catching the light and twisting it into a million rays. The platoon was in the strangest discotheque in the universe. Lefty, take the beamer, Gunny tried to order, but he still couldn't hear his own voice. Gunny tried to order. He couldn't hear his own voice, and Lefty looked loopy. He was probably still half scrambled. Gunny did it himself, finding it surprisingly difficult to wrench the beamer free from Aziz's grasp, a lampstand under the very end. With the big beamer, Gunny scanned the tunnel. The magenta fire from the teardrop end had been snuffed. The magenta fire in the teardrop room had been snuffed. The waves were dying down and the crust wasn't reforming. The intensity of the blast had fricasseed the hardened crust into a sea of black gelatin. It was some kind of multi-phase plasmic something or other. Weird jit. Gunny wanted to ask Member if he'd taken a sample. Gunny wanted to ask Member if he'd taken a sample. Member looked battered but alert. Gunny felt a moment of relief. Okay, do narrators exclaim? What a beating they'd taken. So the narrator here is Gunny, right? Pretty much all the italicized narrator speech is just Gunny's thoughts. Where's the what a beating they'd taken? Okay. Yeah. So I think when we italicize text like that, we're weren't we supposed to not fucking italicize text in that way? Yeah, just I think you're kind of right there. Yeah, fuck it. Yeah, I think for signed language we just made it all caps, and then I think we're allowed to use italicized text. We're not using it to indicate like telepathy. That was the last book. Yeah, yeah, I'm all right with. I think it's okay where it's just like a stand aside sentence. No, yeah, doing double duty with our italics there. I like this change here where they're so beat up it's difficult to tell them apart. Um, I want mind wipe to be a single word. For a moment, Gunny was relieved the mission recorder hadn't been mind wiped, but then he remembered they were still trapped and running out of air. So let's try this paragraph again. Gunny thought he ought to ask Member to take a sample. The Marines were so. The Marine Gunny thought he ought to ask. Gunny thought he ought to ask Member to take a sample and scan the platoon for him. The Marines were so beat up it was difficult to tell them apart. Mm-hmm. Finally, he spotted the Elephant Skull Herald. Member was battered but alert. Okay. Gunny wanted to order Member to take a sample. He scanned the platoon, but he found their faces were so beat up it was difficult to tell them apart. Finally, he spotted the Elephant Skull Herald. Member was battered but alert. For a moment, Gunny was relieved the mission recorder hadn't been mind-wiped, but then he remembered they were still trapped and running out of air. The teardrop. The fire had been snuffed, but the walkway... The explosion had snuffed the fire, but it also completely destroyed the walkway that once bridged the lake. The edge attached to their platform had been warped into a crazy, twisted spiral and sheared off 3 paces out. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Yeah, let's take out the part about the uvulas. It's just too confusing there. Again, Gunny blinked at the force they'd somehow withstood. Reaction ain't linear. If they hadn't blasted the crust into goo, they could have just walked across. But of course, then there would have been no shockwave to snuff the fire. The door at their back had held. They were stuck here. No chance they could swim in armor. Gunny scanned the corridor, looking for a way. Gunny scanned the corridor, looking for a way out. Maybe they could drive spikes into the ceiling. But there was no chance they could make it across in time. And Yakov's... Gunny wondered how much air was left, but his watch had stopped. If there was no way out... Probably for the best. If there was no way out, it was better not to know. The waves of oily gunk were dying down. The waves of gunk were dying down. A small island. The waves of gunk were dying down, and a small island rose a few meters from the jagged edge of the ruined walkway. Gunny turned the beamer on it. The floater was a 3-armed, starfish-like creature. Each of its tapering arms branched into 3 more. Then those arms had 3 pointed fingers. So here we because these guys have like 9 arms. I think I looked this up, and they would be aneopods. But I couldn't find a good place. Like a tard wouldn't know that fucking word, so we couldn't include it in the story. Well, No Way Out, is that not enough air to get out safety? Well, at this point in the story, they can't breach the door at their back, and there's this giant lake of black gunk in front of them. They're literally like stranded on this platform. So I wonder how we can make that clear. The looking at his watch part. Okay. Yeah, we need to make it clear that they're like stranded here. Mm-hmm. Gunny scanned the corridor, looking for a way out. Gunny wondered how much was left, but his watch had stopped. Probably for the best. If there was no way out, it was better not to know. Okay, so let's look at those changes that we made right there. Gunny looked out at the Black Lake. Gunny looked out at the Black Lake. If they hadn't blasted the crust into goo, they could have walked across it. But now it was liquid. There was no chance they could swim in their armor. They were stranded here with no way across and no way to get through the door at their backs. Gunny scanned the corridor, racking his brains for a solution. Could they drive spikes into the ceiling and swing across somehow? He doubted they could make it out before they... If there was no way out, it was better not to know. The waves of gunk were dying. Let's see. The waves had died and the sea of gunk was tranquil again. A small island rose a few meters from the jagged edge of the ruined walkway. Gunny turned the beamer on it. The floater was a 3-armed starfish. Each of its tapering arms branched into 3 more. No, shout out to Sub-Ohm with Sub-Arm. Mm-hmm. Its skin was a mottled granite-like material, walled in by raised lines of dark red webbing. At intersections, the webbing rose into brilliant crimson spines. All right, so I think I saved this image. Yeah, check this guy out here. This is our source inspiration right here. Yeah, these things actually exist. Fucking badass. Whew. Yeah, that's a wild-looking starfish, man. Three Marines already had their shredders trained on the starfish. Gunny handed the beamer off to Lefty, who had Choppa's axe ready. Okay, so three Marines already had their shredders trained on the starfish. Lefty had Choppa's axe. There we go. Gunny handed off the beamer and then unslugged Betty. Hell yeah. Whispering a muted thanks, his beloved twin jet was unhurt. It's not muted. It's weird how muted makes us feel like there's like a little bit of sound, but mute means there's nothing. English, man. All right. As they watched, the brilliant red spines of the starfish's brilliant red spines were darkening. Color was bleeding out of its webbing. When the whole starfish had gone black, when the whole starfish turned black, yeah, we don't need the whole. When it was completely black, a spasm shot through the arms, and then it went rigid. The starfish darkened until it was completely black. Then a spasm shot through its arms and it went rigid. Gunny didn't need a xenobiologist to know it was dead. Gunny didn't need a xenobiologist to know it was dying. Got him, Gunny signed, but the other Marines looked skeptical. Gunny frowned. This dead starfish looked smaller than the thing that got sticky. It was only about 3 meters in diameter. Could it really have taken out a Marine in armor? In the distance, Gunny could hear the welcome preamble of tinnitus. He wasn't deaf after all. If not for the imminent suffocation, things would be looking up. Each Marine that could stand was glaring at the starfish, clenching their weapons. It didn't feel like enough. But then another island rose, and then another after that. Then there were a dozen starfish floating, then 2 dozen. They kept popping up all over the corridor of gunk until there must have been hundreds of them. Whoops, Gunny said. His voice seemed very far away, but he could hear it. He turned to Bango, who still had the same starstruck expression. 6 bars, Bango signed, his hands trembling with excitement. Sculling 1,000 Xenos wasn't Sculling 1,000 Xenos wasn't how Gunny had meant to end his career. For a moment, there was an unsettling feeling in the pit of his stomach. He assumed it was guilt, but it kept growing. Beneath their feet, there was an ominous vibration. An ominous vibration began beneath their feet. The high ringing in the distance was building into a low, droning roar. The sea of dead starfish was on the move, building into a clockwise spin. A burbling rumble from the center of the corridor built into the most impressive belch any of them had ever heard. And a whirlpool began to form. "Clip back in," Gunny shouted, and when he saw many Marines making the can't hear "Clip back in," Gunny shouted, and when he saw many Marines gesturing can't hear, he signed it to them. No, sign the order sounds like he's "Clip back in," Gunny shouted, and then he swapped to sign language when he saw a few could hear him. The Marines hastened to secure themselves to Winchester's line. The vast chamber was draining far too fast. We don't need far too. The vast chamber was draining too fast for it to be gravity alone. The low burbling roar of the gyre was suddenly silenced as the air was sucked out of the chamber. They felt the vacuum. The vacuum wrenched at the platoon, but Winchy's line held. The Marines waited until the rumbling abated, and then scrambled to unclip themselves and peer over the edge. Lefty shone the big beamer down at the city they'd destroyed. Gunny felt his knees get weak looking down at the 300-meter drop, but he couldn't look away. Gunny had assumed this corridor was just a big pipe full of gunk. Gunny had assumed this corridor was just a big pipe full of... Gunny had assumed this corridor was just a big pipe full of jit. But beneath the surface there had once been a massive honeycomb of structures. All the way down they could see interrupted tubes that looked like they had once webbed the entire chamber. In places they swelled into dipyramids and triangular prisms. In places they swelled into dipyramids and tetrahedrons. Everything was made of the same silvery material as the walls. In places they swelled into dipyramids and tetrahedrons. Everything was made of that same everything made of the same silvery material as the walls. Once this must have all been a seamless mirror, but now every surface was smashed into a Googleplexian nightmare of reflections. Scanning the rooms with the big beamer, as Lefty scanned the rooms with the big beamer, Gunny tried to visualize what it would have looked like if it... Okay, once this must have all been a seamless mirror, but now every surface was smashed into a Googleplexian nightmare of reflections. As Lefty scanned the ruins with the big beamer, Gunny was struggling to visualize what the city would have looked like if they hadn't blown it to bits. He couldn't do it. He couldn't. It was just too complicated for his mind. The edges of the tubes were ragged and twisted from the incredible violence of Bango's epiphany. Gunny had an eye out for any sort of power or gas lines, but there was nothing. No sign of any tech. Was this an aquarium? Were the starfish food for the whale? For a moment he wondered if they were a different kind of life form, but as he looked closer he realized they were clusters of 3 or more starfish twisted into balls. Were they hugging? Mating? Were they hugging? Mating? Whatever they were doing, it was only buying them a little time. They were fading to black just like the others. There was a burst of motion below. A tube fell and struck a dipyramid. It burst open and a torrent of black fluid spat out 3 starfish, slamming them again. Whew. There was a burst of motion below. A tube fell and struck a dipyramid. It burst open and a torrent of black fluid shot out, spitting 3 starfish against it. spitting 3 starfish against the chamber wall. The platoon washed. Gunny watched the starfish thrashing as they plummeted to the bottom. Rough go. Gunny surveyed his platoon. He was seeing nothing but unease at the destruction they'd wrought. But air was running out. There was no time to wallow if they didn't want to suffocate, too. Gunny waved for attention, then pointed to the drain hole that had emptied the chamber. Open space. Must be a pour. We climbed down. The unit was huddling at the lip of the platform like a flock of armored penguins. The unit was huddling at the lip of the platform like a flock of armored penguins, uneasily eyeing the drop. It was a long way down at 2 gravities, and the nearest structure seemed impossibly far away. Gunny was puckering hard right along with them. Gunny was puckering just as hard as the others. Tards weren't good with heights. He wondered how in bells they were going to get down there. The closest tube was almost 5 meters away. Chuck it, Bonzo signed. Hook me up, Winchy. Winchester clipped his spool into Bonzo's donut, and a huddle of Marines grabbed hold of the linesman to anchor him, while Lefty shined the beamer to illuminate the target. The tube beneath him. Bonzo got the closest tube. There we go. Bonzo got a running start and dashed to the edge of the platform, taking a flying leap at the illuminated bullseye. He came up almost a meter short. It was a hell of a leap, but there was no way. The unit began to reel him back in. We don't need back. The unit began to reel him in, but Gunny stopped them. 2 meters more line, Gunny signed. Then he caught Bonzo's attention. Swing, Gunny signed. Then he got a thumbs up back. They swung Bonzo back and forth until he could clamp his mitts into the edge of the tube and pull himself up. He motioned for more line. Gunny couldn't understand why, but then Bonzo hopped off the other edge, and Gunny realized it was so that his weight could be an anchor for the others to slide down. Gunny could see... Marines were pursing their lips in silent whistles at the daring move. Bonzo's the bravest. Slide down. Double time, Gunny signed. One by one, the Marines were sliding down the line to the tube. Gunny, Winchy, and Lefty were the last on the platform. Lefty was struggling to fasten Choppa's axe to his back. He didn't have the right clip for it. Gunny thought about ordering Lefty to leave the axe behind, but he knew Lefty wouldn't comply. Instead, Gunny bent over Aziz, waving his hand over the Marine's face, but there was no sign of comprehension. Semper Lucent, Aziz. Semper Lucent, Aziz, Gunny prayed. He disconnected Aziz's Tank 3 and passed it to Winchy. Then he flipped the blast shield up and pressed flush, extinguishing the lampsman. Lefty, stop, Gunny ordered. He could see Lefty clutching the axe, ready to protest. Instead, Gunny first swapped his Tank 3 with Yancey's. Then he used a gob of suit seal foam to stick the axe to Lefty's back. Finally, Gunny took S's last tank for himself, and then left. Finally, Gunny took SS' last tank for himself, and he and Lefty slid down the line one after the other. And then he and Lefty slid down the line, one at a time. For a second afterward, Winchy was frozen on the edge. Jump down, swing, Gunny signed. Winchy was frozen on the platform, trying to will himself to leap down, but he couldn't do it. Can't, Gunny, Winchy signed frantically, almost in tears. Is cable brake on? Gunny signed. Aye, aye, Gunny, Winchy signed back. Gunny nodded and yanked the cable hard, pulling Winchy off the platform. For a split second, they could see Winchy's mouth open in a silent scream. Then he dropped and swung beneath them, narrowly missing hitting the next tube. The unit braced to take his weight. Below them, Winchy was swinging his fists. Below them, Winchy was swinging his fists in the air, hissing mad. Bar by bar, they swung him to the next platform and began the process again. Bar by bar, they leapfrogged their way down the pipe like they were climbing a giant... Bar by bar, they leapfrogged their way down the pipe like they were climbing through a giant jungle gym. The going got harder. Gravity was increasing as they made their way down the tube. Midway was almost 3G. Bonzo could barely make the leaps now. We slide, Gunny signed, now that the edge was sloping down. They began sliding along the wall to the next tube, anchoring themselves with the line in case they missed. Gunny kept an eye out for suits getting shredded by the fractured surface. The platoon was making good time. It seemed almost possible they could make it out of the pour. Gunny didn't want to think about the difficulty of finding their way back to the rats or the radiation they'd soak out on the ghost skin. He had room in his head for only one disaster at a time. This is dope. The pour that had drained the chamber was ahead, surrounded by wreckage. It looked like a pyramid had covered it once, but the structure had been so thoroughly destroyed that only the feet remained. Gunny wondered if Choppa had landed right on the point before he blew. The bottom of the pipe was a ravaged graveyard of shards, carpeted with thousands of dead starfish. Gravity had risen to almost 4G. The Marines were feeling it with every step. They hit us first, Gunny tried to tell himself, but it was too big a stretch. It wasn't like the 37th had an RSVP. It wasn't like the 37th had RSVP'd for this visit. They were scavengers. Gunny hoped the Aeneapods weren't intelligent, and rationalized that they were all doomed anyway. Pinchy the whale was too damaged to dive. Oh, fuck. Did we run out of hard drive space for the fucking recording? God damn it. All right, I'll be right back. Hold on. I gotta fix this momentarily. Okay. Jesus. Yeah, I gotta get. Yeah, I'm kind of thinking about building a new computer, but there is a non-zero. Don't fucking do it, you chair. Don't slide into my shot. Don't do it. Okay, cool. Let's stop. I'm thinking about building a new computer for the show, but if there's one editing package that I might do where it's like $2,500, but they just edit like almost 500,000 words for that price. That's pretty fucking decent right there. If they're any good. So we'll find out. I got sample edits coming. Whew. Everything in this world is expensive, except tards. They're cheap. When the time came to re-enter the it just dawns on me that there are not going to be 13 chapters. There had to be another chapter break in here somewhere. Pinchy the whale was too damaged to dive. When the time came... Okay. Pinchy was too damaged to dive. When it was time to breach, the whale would go nova for sure. At the lip of the pour, the tards began to rappel down the pipe. Gunny watched the uncanny moment where the Marines passed the airlock's threshold, and the 4 crushing G's of gravity just vanished. If only the smarts could figure out how that worked. Gunny felt a tug at his arm. Member wanted his attention. Gunny, look. Member pointed out a note of color among the silver shards and the dead starfish. On an arm pinned beneath the rubble, there were 3 smaller starfish embedded in the skin. The little starfish still had coloration, even though the webbing of the arm had gone dark. Still alive, Gunny signed. Smarts want. Lefty, chop. Lefty tried to hack off the arm, but the axe couldn't get a good bite. It was like trying to chop down a steel beam. I should have just melted it with some jet fuel. Y'all are pretty quiet out there. Is the restream fucked up again, or yeah, maybe it's just people are enthralled by this action sequence. Bonzo, hold, Gunny signed, and Bonzo. Oh, it works. Okay, cool. Oh, hey, yeah. Shout out to Guilty Country there. Thank you guys for that mic check. Gunny signed. Bonzo pulled the starfish limb taut so Lefty could get a better shot at it with the axe. With his help, Lefty managed to sever the limb. Xenon. Bringing back a living Xeno was Nod for sure. I'll stick arm to you, Gunny signed to Lefty, reaching for his suit seal phone when he saw a movement. Something huge was looming behind the Marine. Something huge was looming behind Lefty. Duck, Gunny signed. And duck, Gunny signed. Duck, Gunny signed, but Lefty was confused, trying to process two ideas simultaneously. The tendril struck the side of Lefty's helmet and flung him nearly 10 meters. Lefty was probably dead the moment the starfish hit him, but he was definitely dead the moment afterward. Lefty was probably dead the moment the starfish hit him, but he was definitely dead upon impact. He crashed against the edge of a tube and it sliced him in two. Lefty crashed into the sharp edge of a jutting tube and it sliced him in two. Lefty, Gunny shouted into his helmet. Oh, that is in quotes? Okay, cool. Lefty, Gunny shouted into his helmet. His mind was full of horror. Gunny unslung Benny and racked the igniter. At Gunny's side, Bonzo had his compensators drawn. So what were his pistols? Like one was fucking armor piercing, and one was high X rounds. Let's see. Oh yeah, it shouldn't be at his Gunny's side. At Gunny's side, Bonzo drew his compensators and opened fire. The starfish was quick. In spite of its size, the starfish was quick, hard to draw a bead on. Strikes of its trifurcated arms. Capping each of its limbs was a teardrop of silvery metal that came to a talon point. All right, so at Gunny's side, Bonzo drew his compensators and opened fire. In spite of its size, the starfish was quick, hard to draw a bead on. It lashed out at Member. A strike from his trifurcated arms smashed a mirrored section of tube. A strike from one of its trifurcated arms smashed a section of metal tube to flinders. I like the word flinders. Yeah, so for your question, Stratum, just his shouldn't have been there. I think it was just like got caught in the edit or whatever there. At once, Gunny knew this was the monster that had taken Sticky, not the little starfish they'd massacred. So where do we... At once, Gunny knew this was the monster that had taken Sticky. At once, Gunny knew this was the monster that had taken Sticky. The big starfish was 5 meters in diameter. Its limbs were as thick as Gunny was tall. The big starfish was hissed, and it had every right to be. It wanted Member. The mission recorder emptied his sidearm into the center mass of the starfish. But his bullets couldn't penetrate. They were ricocheting everywhere. Bennier. Gunny let Benny roar. The twin jet worked in vacuum, though its effect was considerably reduced. As the starfish raised a tendril high in preparation for a killing blow, Gunny nailed it with a gout of chemical fire. Scoring a direct hit on its underside. As the starfish raised a tendril high for a killing blow, Gunny nailed it with a gout of chemical fire. Gunny nailed its underside with a gout of chemical fire. Instantly, the starfish was engulfed in flames, and it bought Member a split second to roll out of the way. The force of the strike sent shrapnel flying. Gunny saw a jet of blood from Member's suit. He'd been pierced. Gunny never let up on the trigger. He kept hosing the starfish down until... He kept hosing the starfish with fire until Benny ran dry. Seemingly blinded, the starfish was whipping its limbs around like a dervish, destroying everything it touched. Today. Shoutouts to Stratum right there. Member was clutching the breach in his suit, trying to stem the flow. Getting close to that monster was suicide, but Gunny didn't even think. He rushed in. Ducking under a swing of flaming tendril. Member had an ugly 3-inch gash on his ribs. Yeah, let's see. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Watching the talon carve through the mirror metal like soft cheese, Gunny made the connection. 9 arms, 9 talon, 9 triangular holes in the floor of the teardrop airlock. The starfish breathed through their hands. The talons were its spacesuit. "Bonzo, shoot the talons," Gunny shouted. "Shoot the claws," Gunny signed, and pointed. "Shoot the claws," Gunny signed at Bonzo, trying to catch the pilot's attention as he reloaded. Gunny tapped his own hand and pointed at the starfish. He saw Bonzo nod in understanding. There was a flash of motion at the corner of his eye, and everything went black. Then there was a flash of motion at the corner of Gunny's eye, and everything went black. For a confused moment, Gunny wondered how the chamber had flooded again so quickly. He was floating, and somewhere behind him a huge bell was ringing, but instead of waking him up, the bell was lulling him to sleep. All the climbing, shouting, and torching of the day had finally caught up with him. He began to drift, thinking if he could just catch a few winks, he could save Member afterward. Save Member. Gunny's eyes shot open and he gasped. His vision was blurry, and there were brown flashes in his peripheral. Gunny knew the symptoms well. He was nearly out of air. One of his tanks had been ruptured. Dizzily, Gunny rose, lurching forward with his hands balled into fists, as if he could box with the monster starfish. Bonzo was dancing backward, trying to reload his pistols as the smoldering starfish advanced. As the smoldering beast advanced, Member was hurling shards. Member was hurling mirror shards at the monster's back, trying to distract it. Gunny no. Mm-hmm. Okay, dizzily, Gunny rose. Gunny rose dizzily, lurching forward with his hands balled into fists, as if he could box with the monster starfish. Gunny rose dizzily and lurched forward with his hands balled into fists, as if he could box with the monster starfish. Bonzo was dancing backward. Mm-hmm. Bonzo was dancing backward and firing as the smoldering beast advanced on him. Member went. Member was picking up shards of mirror and hurling them, trying to distract it. The big starfish was moving slower now. It was badly burned, and Gunny could see ropes of black fluid seeping from a crevice between two of its limbs. Gunny tripped. Mighty Sis, the inscription read. Gunny grinned. His vision became suddenly clear, locked onto that seeping orifice. One shot, one swing. With his last gasp of breath, Gunny dashed forward and swung Choppa's axe as hard as he could. He felt it bite deep and hung on, riding it down as the starfish collapsed. Everything was moving so slowly. His eyes were closing. The last thing he saw was Bonzo's compensators flashing, then blissful darkness. Too soon, Gunny was wrenched out of his rest. Fresh, wonderful air was pouring into his lungs. He felt Member compressing his chest through his suit. The mission recorder's worried expression turned to joy as Gunny sputtered to life. Behind him, the monster starfish had turned pure black. Okay. How? Gunny stammered, wondering how he was breathing. There were no air tanks left. Let's make them oxygen tanks. He saw Bonzo standing over him, a slight bluish tinge to his face. Semper Lucid, Gunny, Bonzo said, and it was strange the way Gunny couldn't hear him speak, but he knew Bonzo so well his mind filled in the voice. Semper Lucid, Gunny, Bonzo said. Gunny stood up, instantly feeling a ringing pain in his head. Oh, shit. That's wild, Stratum. It hurt to think, but he couldn't rest. He motioned for Member to trunk up. He gave me his last chuck-in tank? Gunny wheezed, aghast. Aye, aye, Gunny, Member said. His voice was solemn and low. Aye, aye, Gunny, Member replied. His voice was low and solemn. Why in the well did you let him do that? Why the chuck did you let him do that? Couldn't stop him, Gunny. He's the pilot. Oh, so we need to I think we need to remove the whole Can you fly it, Gunny? Double bigger. I can't even see straight. Come on, let's get out of here before we run out of air. Can you walk on your own? I'll have to. Gunny scooped up double bigger. Gunny detrunked and scooped up Bonzo's compensators and tucked them into his belt. Then he slung Benny on his back. There were tiny fireworks exploding in his head with every step, but he knew it would get better once they got into 0G. Member was scrawling down a sketch of the scene in the rudder as Gunny collected himself. Then he strapped a severed limb to his back. The little starfish were still alive somehow. Gunny thought about telling Member to just leave it. Gunny thought about telling Member to leave it, but he wasn't so far gone he wanted to miss out on a week of Nod. Nah. No, that doesn't belong there. As they climbed down the pour, Gunny had to take a last look back at Bonzo. The light caught his visor in a funny way, made it look like he was smiling. Gunny got out of there double time. Okay, so this is epilogue. You want a what? The captain of Marines stammered, looking unusually flustered. Geist, Kami, I thought I was the half-dead one. I said we want a vacation. That's what I'm not getting, Gunny. What do you mean, a vacation? Do you mean more nod? A week is the max. Any more and you'll die. That's what I'm not getting, Gunny. What do you mean, a vacation? Do you mean more nod? We can't give you more than a week. You'll die. Nah, we nodded plenty. What we want is a vacation. We scored big on this one. Brought back the gunk, the glass snow, the starfish BBs, all kinds of great shit. Smarts must be squirtin'. Language, Gunny, Com cautioned. His cheeks burned at the thought of Gunny saying that in front of a smart. He'd get the whole Polybius Center sensitivity re-education. Yeah. What I'm saying is, look, my hearing won't be back for 100... wait, this is a little one. Does he have a normal flustered look? Let's just say looking flustered. The bandages wound around his head and reminded Com of a turban. Two-hour-long call about deploying Magento 2. Well, you missed like so much of our edit here, but we're almost done here. Geist, Kami, I thought I was the half-deaf one. I said we want a vacation, Gunny said, crossing his arms over his bare chest. That's what I'm not getting, Gunny. What do you mean a vacation? We can't give you more than a week of nod. You'll die. Nah, we nodded plenty. What we want is a vacation. We scored big one. Oh, I really like that, actually. That's fucking great stuff. Oh. Oh, that's Fappy Waz thing. Yeah, yeah. Oh, no, I like Vacation, where he, mhm. So here, we'll do this here in like these italics right there. Vacation. We scored big on this mission. "37 scored big on this mission. We brought back the black gunk, the glass snow, them starfish babies, all kinds of great shit. Smarts must be squirtin'." Oh, I love that line. "Language, Gunny," Com cautioned. The captain of Marines cautioned. His cheeks burned at the thought of Gunny saying that in front of a smart. It would probably get the whole Polybius sent to sensitivity re-education. I love that line. Yeah, yeah. What I'm saying is, look. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, I hear you. I mean, I don't hear you. My hearing won't be a hundo for what, 3 weeks minimum? That's what the doc says. We can give this doctor a name here if we want. Who's a famous doctor of special needs chatters? Mm. Mm. Yeah, I think we've been clever enough. We don't need to do more. That's what the doc says. And I can't go on missions if I can't hear good. Well, you could with a waiver. I'd rather you didn't, though. You need ears on a whale. I know I'm not the only one. Ain't just me. About half the platoon can't hear jit right now. Mango really went all out. 6 bars, the comm said with a low whistle. Shaking his head in amazement. He knew a lot about The captain of Marines knew a lot about explosives. Gunny had always wondered if that was how he got all scarred up. Oh, yeah. Wait. Do we... It would probably get the whole Polybius sent to sensitivity re-education. Love that. Could you imagine you're like a sailor on this fucking spaceship and one of the tardigrade space marines says some shit to one of the smarts and then the whole fucking ship has to go to sensitivity re-education. That feel when we lost Sticky, Choppa, Yank, Yancey, Essis, Aziz, Lefty, and Bonzo. That's a third of the platoon. 34.782, Gunny. 34.78%, Gunny. Lefty was in there. He was always short a couple percent. Call it a third. The point is, we want a vacation. Tardigrade Marines don't get vacations, Gunny. Well, why not? None of them ever ask. Tars just want to get on whales.
More than a third. 34.78%, Gunny. Lefty was in there. He was always short a couple percent. Call it a third. The point is, we want a vacation. Tardigrade Marines don't get vacations, Gunny. But why not? None of them ever asked. Tars just want to get on whales. I don't know. Maybe none of them ever asked. Tars just want to get on whales. Well, I'm asking. Pretty please, my unit has earned some cod clam R&R. There's no way I can get the Admiral to go for it. The comm turned up his palms, trying to say it was out of his hands. Gunny stared him down. He wasn't fooled. We can take this boat, Kami. Gunny said. Almost too quiet to hear. The Chief of Marines froze. Of course they could. Even with 34.78% of them dead and many recovering from serious injuries. The Tards could absolutely take control of the Plebeius. Are you threatening to mutiny? The Chief of Marines asked. Oh, it should be Captain of Marines. The Captain of Marines asked, stiffening his posture. Even though he knew they would lose the battle horribly, he couldn't let the statement go unchecked. Pshaw! No, of course not, Kami. Just saying, between you and me, I think the boys have had enough whaling for a bit. We want to do something different. Give us a month. Lieutenant Genie says we're due for an overhaul of the Rook Drive anyway. The comm scowled. Of course, Lieutenant Genie was one of the conspirators. Of course, Lieutenant Genie was one of the conspirators. He honestly... He wondered if she would even side with the humans in a mutiny. Where would you even go? You've never been off a ship in your life, Gunny. We want to go fishing, Gunny demanded. The comm couldn't... His arms are already crossed. The comm couldn't help but laugh. Real fishing. On water, not black guns. No guns. With a boat that floats, make sure it's tough enough for tards. Plenty of grog. And I want a captain hat. Ooh. The Admiral's gonna have my ass, the comm said, shaking his head ruefully. Watch out, Kami. I hear he's got a whopper. The comm's smile faded. He knew where Gunny had come by that piece of information. He put a hand on Gunny's shoulder, half expecting the sergeant to bat it away, but he didn't. What sort of space marine wants to go on a vacation with no guns? He put a hand on Gunny's shoulder, half expecting the gunnery sergeant to bat it away, but he didn't. He was a good pilot, Gunny. Best I've ever seen. He was the best of us. The bravest, the smartest, the fastest. But in the end, he was dumber than Heaths. I miss him, Gunny said. Gunny sniffed. I miss all of them. Get us our vacation, Kami. Aye, aye, Gunny, the captain of Marines said. Returning, the... Aye, aye, Gunny, the captain of Marines agreed. He returned Gunny's salute. Damn! So that was the story. uh, so we can't say the admiral's going to have my hat because we turned that into the joke about him getting fucked in the ass by the admiral. The admiral's going to have my ass, the comm said, shaking his head ruefully. Watch out, commie. I hear he's got a whopper. Gunny cracked. The comm smile faded. He knew where Gunny had come by that piece of information. He put a hand on Gunny's shoulder, half expecting the gunnery. The Marine to bat it away, but he didn't. He was the best of us. The bravest, the smartest, the fastest. But in the end, he was dumber than Heaths. I miss him, Gunny sniffed. I miss all of them. Get us a chuckin' vacation, commie. Aye, aye, Gunny, the captain of Marines agreed. He returned Gunny's salute. Well, that is the end of SPACETARDS. Thank everybody who was with us for all 9 days, or any days that you caught here. I like that we were able to turn our one-off chapter about the admiral drilling the midshipman into a poignant and sad note at the end there. All right, so let's go through all the Marines and what their helmet heralds were. So in the command, there's Gunny, the gunnery sergeant, and his helmet herald was his face with a word balloon that says "Don't chuck up." Then there was Bonzo, the pilot. His helmet was all red with no design on it, because red ones go faster. And then there was Member, the mission recorder. He's got that elephant skull and Art Deco outlines with Memento Mori in gold Gothic lettering. And then here are the specialists on the mission. There was Sticky, the stickman. His logo is a bundle of sticks wreathed in flames surrounded by spider webs. Then there was Bango, the demo man. He has a nuclear blast with Proud of the Cloud. Chapa, the Axeman, had a Bell helicopter UH-1 Iroquois Huey toting a double-bladed axe. Like on a, I don't know, it was like swinging it on a line or something like that. And then there was Yank, the Hammerman, who has Mjolnir in Norse knotwork. So Winchester, the linesman, had 2 cross Winchester 1886 lever-action rifles on the back of his helmet. We had Yakov, the Ladderman, who has a version of the Jacob's Dream painting by William Blake. It's a Stairway to Heaven on his thing. So Aziz, the lampsman, had a drawing of the Lighthouse of Alexandria. So Deuce, the backup pilot, had a Deuce coupe with a hot rod with billowing smoke and flame rising from its tires. So Filthy, the unit's burner, had a phallic wing serpent flying over a starfield. Okay, so then a rifleman, so Sipper, had a skeleton drinking wine from a glass. So actually, we got he had a, this was wrong. It wasn't the blue thing. So the Bell helicopter Huey was a Predator joke about get to the choppa. But in the story, it's just a big blue ox. So I knew we were going to have to fix that at some point there. What do we have? So Plinko has the Fool from the tarot deck in there. Clipper has a pair of scissors crossed with a Desert Eagle handgun. We don't get into it in the story, but he's actually the unit's barber with his deagle. So Heaths has a pork chop surrounded by an aura of flame. Lefty had a roaring lion. SS has the cool S symbol right there. Yancey had a Mad Hatter with a Con Sappho's card. So he had a Mad Hatter with a Con Sappho's signed card tucked into the brim of his hat. Clamps had a vice grip crushing a skull. Gabo had a goblin with a knife in his teeth. Sambone had cross bazookas over the big one. And Bickles had a cowboy riding a nuclear bomb. Yeah, so that's the whole story there. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this. It came out to be... we cut a little bit of this there.
So it came out to be almost 30,000 words, exactly, once we add in the whole thing. Yeah, so I've already contacted a editor to do a sample chapter of this piece. I'm pretty satisfied, but this is going to be a fun one to do, the audio recording of, and I think I may just start working on the audio recording. Yeah, it's not this. We're not taking ourselves too seriously here. I had a good time with this one. I think we got some really stellar comments and suggestions from people right here. I like where the story goes. I don't think it's trying to do anything that it can't do. I really enjoyed meeting these Marines. You know, like when Bonzo gives up his tanks for Gunny, I'm like, you know, getting a little misty here. Let me see. I think this does, you know, like we still need to have a real editor take a look at this, but I think it's in good shape. And like I would definitely watch just like a short anime or something like that of this. That'd be fucking fantastic. I think the story makes good on its premise of delivering like low technology solutions to stupid problems. And I think we're pretty consistent throughout with the voice of our characters. Like they're never too smart. They're never totally retarded. But they're just kind of like a little bit dumb, which is where we wanted to be at. So I like this line. He was the best of us, the bravest, the smartest, the fastest. But in the end, he was dumber than Heaths. I miss him. Contact the Astartes guy to make a new series about tards. God, he must just be getting millions of people being like, "Oh, make something for me, dude." Yeah. So so now that this is done, we have a few things that we're going to think about. So let me give you an idea before we end this stream. I'll give you an idea of what our next steps are. So I'm going to pay a copy editor for this. It probably costs about $300 to get this copy edited, where somebody's going to go through each line and do a better job of basically what I just did. I think it should take a good editor about 10 hours on this motherfucker. So that's them clocking about 10 or 11 pages an hour, really going through this with a fine-tooth comb. And that includes like a proofreading pass, which hopefully they have somebody who is not the editor doing the proofreading. Because I think I'm going to use this one service for it there. So after they get me back that manuscript, I will typeset the whole thing in InDesign. And that's where I'll do, I'm also going to try and see if I can get somebody relatively inexpensive to do sketches of all those helmet heralds. And I want them to be the start of each of the 13 chapters in this guy. Just have like a little helmet herald. Now that you know what happens in the story, the helmet herald for chapter 13 is just going to be a helmet with no design on it, right? Because that's going to be Bango's helmet, because this is the chapter where, or Bonzo's helmet, which is just red, and this is the chapter where Bonzo sacrifices himself. So yeah, we'll probably just have the like back of a helmet. So yeah, I'd like to have just those little things on each of the chapters. Probably just have like a round thing. So that'll add another, I don't know, like 10 or 15 pages to our story when all is said and done. Not 10 or 15, because I think each of those will take up like a half page in the printed thing. So we're going to do this one as a printed book. I like it. And I just want to see, and one of the marketing things I want to do with this one is I want to print up 100 copies of SPACETARDS and leave them in like coffee shops and like little libraries and stuff like that, because I think it will make people super upset to find this book. Intellectually challenged people who somehow fly around in space and use their idiocy to trick people to help them get free shit. Yeah, so I am looking into like an out of work tattoo artist on Fiverr. Like I reached out to like 4 or 5 people, and I haven't liked anybody that I've gotten back yet. So yeah, if anybody knows a tattoo artist who wants to make like I think for all 12 of those sketches, I'd like to come in at under $200. And then also I'm going to reach out to the guy that did the survival mode cover, If you liked the cover for Survival Mode, I think he could do a really good job with this whole SPACETARDS thing. And I'm also gonna bring up with him, like, do you want to do these sketches? So I am gonna try to spend under $1,000 total to put this story together. I will tell you that I think the odds of SPACETARDS making money are pretty low, to tell you the truth. I don't. In terms of marketing it, one, I don't really know much about marketing books, and it's like definitely the weakest. Like I'm okay at writing, and I'm like getting increasingly okay at editing. I think we do a good job with our cover design, though we're not professionals, but close enough. You know what I mean? Definitely close enough for science fiction. Like there are some commercial science fiction cover artists out there that I'm definitely better than. But they're close to the bottom of the barrel there. I think our layout is good and everything, but marketing, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. So, do I make any money on Amazon sales? So right now I just have all my books on Amazon to where they're just as cheap as can fucking be. Like I just have them at the lowest possible price that you can have them at. So I need to change up a few of my things. Like one thing what we're going to do is like I'm going to take off the thing where all the books are free on my site. That just has not gotten me any kind of traction. And I like giving away books for free. I don't think books should cost money if you can help it. And especially since my stuff is not in libraries because I'm not affiliated with a big enough publisher at this point. It's important to me that people can get this shit if they want to. But for a little bit, they might just have to pirate it because I'm gonna have to shell out significant money for editing here, and I need to break even because like break even. Like I don't expect to be compensated for the time I spend writing this, but I can't lose money on it essentially every single time. That'll just that makes you feel like, why are you doing this for nothing? So before we drop this money on editing and stuff like that, I need to come up with a plan to sell 1,000 units of this. So I may reach out to some of our listeners for help and so forth. This is kind of like a controversial title here, so we might be able to parlay some of the controversy over the fact that it's called SPACETARDS and features developmentally disabled space marines. But like a very smart woman I know has told me like a few times, she's like, controversy does not sell books, Zach. Stop. We can just put these books in libraries, like the people who hang art in museums without permission. That'd be kind of cool, honestly. But that's really annoying to librarians, and I do not want to annoy librarians. Like they're cool people. But yeah, let's. If you have any ideas on ways that we could market it, like podcasts that I could appear on, or honestly, what you would really need for me to sell copies of this is probably for me to get into an argument with somebody about it. But honestly, like I feel like this work, it's a good story and it has some artistic merit there. I think the treatment of the retarded space marines is a good one. And yeah, I'd like to see more stories about people who are retarded where they're able to this is kind of like the Forrest Gump of Space Marines right here. You know what I'm saying? All right, enough of this shit. I'm just digging my own grave with all this. But yeah, thank you guys so much for being a part. I hope you enjoyed this story. We'll try and do an audiobook version of this once I get it copy edited and so forth. And I like this one. This is like a fun thing. Next up on the agenda, and I'm glad that my voice is not. It seems like it's coming back. My throat's a little sore, but I don't feel like I'm losing my voice too bad here. Bong. Next up is a book that is just a really, really good. I think you guys are really going to enjoy this one. It's called Lemon Maybe and the Electric Lady. And this is the next book that we're going to be editing is about a dive bar in Hell's Kitchen where the drunks start acquiring superpowers. And there's none of that. Like with great power comes great responsibility. These are people from a fucking dive bar and they react about as you would expect when they're given superhuman powers. And it's very grimy. This story is written in a very like New York kind of way. I think my tagline for it is, you can smell the subway on every page. So look forward to that one. I think I'm going to take a little break on editing live on stream. We may start that one on like Monday.
But I also want to get some of my other affairs in order. All right. So see you guys later. And yeah, good job, everybody.